Hello and welcome to SEO Rankings Do Follow podcast. Here we hold regular talks with SEO and digital marketing experts to discuss hot SEO topics and share actionable insights with the SEO community. So subscribe to stay on top of everything going on in SEO. In today's episode, we're going to talk about pricing for impact, strategies that elevate SEO agency value. And to help us get to the bottom of this issue and provide our listeners with actionable insights, I will be talking to Jen Cornwell, a seasoned SEO expert and the Vice President of SEO at Ignite Visibility, a leading internet marketing service company whose clients include Tony Robbins, Experian, and Sharp, to name a few. Welcome, Jen. Happy to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
And if you don't mind, I would just love to jump right in and ask you to tell us a bit more about yourself, your background. Tell us a bit more about Ignite Visibility, what you guys do over there, and how you come to focus on pricing strategies. I realize that you're an expert in a lot of things, but and specifically in pricing, I want to make that transition into today's topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my career also kind of, I've been on a lot of different price points as far as SEO services go. So I started out in just local, working with small businesses, and so really small packages, but that is where I got my SEO foundations about 10 years ago now. Always in San Diego, been in San Diego my entire SEO career. There's a lot of, a really big pool actually of just SEO agencies here in San Diego. I had no idea until I got into it. But I've been at Ignite now for about 6 years. I started out as a project manager, and now I've been in the VP role for a little over a year. And I think in the last 3 years is really where I've started to get more involved in what pricing looks like, what our product looks like, and how we sell to clients. I'd say the last year in this VP role, super focused on selling. So I think how we've established ourselves over time, I guess getting into Ignite history a little bit, we're not new anymore. We're like 10 years old now, but we've grown a lot in the last, I'd say, 5 years or so, pretty exponentially. So the foundations we started with are different than where we are now, right? We've had to scale. We've had to understand how we grew as a business. We've had to understand the marketplace and what the demand is. So shifting our pricing strategy to try to understand the prospects, the types of clients we want to bring in has been super, super important. And actually a really big topic of discussion, I think, in this last 6 to 8 months.
To talk more specifically about pricing, I wanted to refer to a research that we did recently at SEO Ranking, where we asked a lot of our users, specifically agencies, what kind of pricing models they have. The most popular option was monthly retainer, which is 33% of our respondents gave us that number. And the average of that check is $1,200. So obviously, it's across the entire globe. This research was done. And this sort of leads me into the question, how do you go about setting a price for services? What factors do you take into account, like maybe customer acquisition cost, ROI?
I mean, all those things are important. I think your hard costs, right? Like, what are you spending money on? What are you building into packages for your client? That's super important. That's what we've really found sets the price. We have obviously our hourly rate. We know how much our deliverables cost. We work on a monthly scope structure. So our clients are always have a monthly set of deliverables, and then they have some annual deliverables baked in there also. And we're doing a 12-month contract typically. So that said, I think those are all things to think about. It's the timeline of the project. How long is it going to take? How quickly do they want results? I won't say that spending more directly correlates with results. But with SEO, if that means you're producing more work, you do have the potential opportunity to speed up your results a little bit. So what are the goals and expectations of the client? And then what are the needs? That's something we run into a lot. You have a startup who's really excited, really knows SEO is important and they want to invest, but they are trying to compete with, I don't know, the Pelotons of the world, right? The super huge mega companies that have been spending a lot of money on SEO potentially for a much longer period of time. So how do you set those expectations and make sure that your client's still getting a good return on their investment? I think those are really critical. We're a very conversion-driven agency as a whole, but definitely inside of our organic campaigns too. It's traffic acquisition, rankings, all of it's really great. But if it's not making our clients any money, then they aren't going to have money to pay us to continue to do the service. So figuring out the right balance, I think, is what is the most important.
I wanted to stop a bit more on that balance, because obviously you're balancing a lot of different things. And I just wanted to maybe stop on a specific example, because you said that, the hourly rate, you work with projects on a monthly basis, but it's a 12-month contract. Was there like a path that you went through when you changed the pricing? Maybe like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you had a different pricing model, and this proved to be something more effective?
So I think originally, sometimes you're trying to get business, right? Sometimes you're making some sacrifices because you just want to bring the business in. And I think when we were in that startup phase, maybe like the first 5 years of the agency, it really was, how do we bring these big logos in? And so what we're looking at for pricing, we of course want to make sure we can sustain our own business and all of that. But is it about making money at that point, or is it about trying to service clients and grow your potential reach, I guess, in some ways, or just grow your client base and your total logos? Now, what we've really shifted toward to make sure that we stay profitable is a level of effort understanding. So how much time does it take to do our deliverables? What does that equate to in our hourly rate? And then how are we baking that into contracts? We're trying to take into consideration things like content production. There's hard costs of writers, there's the content management, there's the research that has to go into it. There's reporting afterwards. I think sometimes people forget about, the more work you do, there's more things to report out on. So that's a cost. And then the communication behind it. Those weren't always things that we were factoring in previously because we were just trying to get the work done and get the results. But now, really critical for us to do that in order for us to be able to scale. So I think understanding what is your hourly price point, and then how much effort does it take for you to get those things to your client, and then taking that and saying, okay, now what are the things that we need to do? And then what is that total effort? I'd say for that specific client, I have at my previous agency, it was packages. No matter who you were, you just bought into $400 package. You got exactly the same thing every single time. Creating those custom scopes that are going to affect the pricing packages you put together for each individual client that you speak with. I think that's really critical too, because SEO is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So you have to be custom in how you price as well.
Once you have clients coming in, how do you communicate that price to them, and in terms of convincing them this is the right way to go, this is the value, this is the justified value of these services? What is that communication like?
That's changed a lot for us too over the years. So I think that depends on the client that you're talking to, the prospect you're speaking with. Like the Tony Robbins of the world are very different from the pediatric dentists of the world. And I've worked on both at Ignite in some capacity. So the way you explain the value is very different based on the price point, the client type, who you're speaking with, the CMO versus, the SEO person, what you need to explain. We take a much more strategic approach. So I think we started out with a lot of analysis-based proof selling, where we came in and we said, hey, here are all the things that are wrong, or all of the opportunity, and here's how much it's going to cost for us to fix and improve. Now it's a much more strategic look at, here's the bigger picture, and here's the value that we see, and then here's what we're going to do to get there. And so you start with sort of this higher level explanation, and then you get more and more granular, and eventually you get down to price, right? I think it's important for the client to understand the value, or the prospect, and then it's also important for them to understand what you're going to do with their money, and how long it's going to take, and all of those things are really critical. And I'd say that's true for prospects, obviously, but it's something we also do with our current clients. If we see an opportunity for them where we can see that we could drive great results if we were able to create an additional 50 pages of content, we want to be able to show them that value and how we're going to get there and what the timeline is. So I think it's really about results and ROI the best you can, which I know can be really tough with SEO. But being able to communicate that and how you're going to get there is critical.
Showing the customer that you're aware of their goals, you know where they're going, and you're all totally on board with them also goes a long way. If you don't provide that information and don't portray yourself as as somebody who's on their team basically for the period of the contract, then probably not going to go well with any price that you set for them. All right. And I want to talk about the challenges, more maybe common mistakes that people make with pricing. And specifically, I wanted you to talk about performance-based or pay-for-performance SEO. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a ton of different ways that you could price out a project. Hey, performance, paying by performance, I don't love that. I don't like that model. We have done that a couple of times. It depends on the client. But it's not great. I think that it sets this expectation of what's going to be coming in. It also makes it difficult, I think, to cover maybe some of your upfront costs. A lot of the work we do in our campaigns is all front-loaded because we're trying to really get a lot of the low-hanging fruit stuff done right away to set up a good foundation to grow the campaign over time. With just the way SEO works, it's so front-loaded that if you're not seeing that money come through, and then your contract length is not long enough to cover the cost. That's the other thing that I see as a mistake is putting together a contract that is short-term, knowing that SEO is a long-term gain. I think when you go into the conversations about pricing and timelines and expectations, that's something that the client is also paying for, is the amount of time, which is extended. It's not a one-off project most of the time for SEO. I think some other things that I've seen in the past, I mean, a lot of people talk about undervaluing your work. We run into that too. I mean, I think, we had to figure out, what did we charge 5 years ago when we were small, and now that we are more established, larger agency, what does that pricing look like? And that's tough. I think it's really hard. It's easy to say that you're worth more. I think it's harder to go into the conversation with a prospect and prove that sometimes when you've made that shift. So it's definitely been something I'd say in this last year that we've, as an agency, just had a lot. That's where a lot of the conversation has been, is like, how do we continue to grow and scale in our pricing model? But yeah, I think the other piece is just the value.
How you go about increasing your price, because this is something a lot of companies are struggling with, and this is something that is expected down the evolutionary road, where you have to get that brand awareness out first. Is that what is the challenge that you have? Every company, I feel, the pricing is an issue, and you always take into account the competitors, the financial situation globally, because you don't want to sell yourself short at the risk of just portraying yourself as not somebody who can deliver the services, right? Could you please, Jen, talk a bit more about a difficulty in increasing prices?
I think it is hard. It's tough. Even as a big agency, I think the biggest thing we saw is knowing your audience. So if you're going to come up with a larger price point, are you now selling to the same client that you were selling to at your lower price point? Has that changed? If who you're selling to has not changed, then yeah, I mean, I think you need to consider whether or not it's the price point that's not matching your audience. So I think when you get into the small businesses, much more price sensitive audience, and they're going to want to know exactly what you're spending every single dollar on, even if it's $100, versus you get to that mid-level, and there's a little more flexibility sometimes there, but it kind of goes both ways depending on who you're working with and what their experience is like and what the business type is in the market. You get into those higher end clients, and yeah, like a higher price point is, I think, expected sometimes when you start to work in that space. But then also it's kind of sometimes a drop in the bucket for them. Sometimes it's a much smaller portion of their marketing budget versus a smaller business where it's maybe all of their marketing budget that they're spending. So I think you can adjust price, but you have to be able to show your value, and then you have to understand how you're showing your value to that specific client type that you're trying to speak with. I think that's the most important part, because yeah, you can charge whatever you want as long as you can prove that it's going to be worth their money.
I want to talk about different market trends and emerging tech that can impact the pricing model that you set for your SEO services. For example, have you had clients that came in with certain expectations, and just because of that demand, you needed to hike up the prices because you needed to integrate on a third-party tool, or you need to study up on a whole new way of, implementing a live widget, automated some solution into the website that just transform the technological experience?
AI is the big one, but without getting to AI first, reporting is a lot of where that comes up. Data and analysis of being able to prove value. I think a lot of businesses right now, what we see is a lot come through and they don't have a great grasp on reporting. The switch over to GA4 really got a lot of people. I think it's been really tough besides, my own opinions on the platform itself. But people have struggled with that. So really trying to understand the numbers behind their business. And so including that in our pricing, that's not necessarily something our SEO team handles. We have some data analyst specialists who will work together to build out custom dashboards, build things out in Looker Studio, make sure CRMs are connected into analytics. But those kinds of things that are obviously still really essential to our work because they do help us show value. So being able to price in tools like BigQuery or other sort of data connectors that we might need based on the KPIs they have, that's been really important to do from the beginning, or at least have an open conversation about through the relationship. But AI, on the other hand, I did some investigating to see, we had a client, we've had a handful of clients. If you do my content with AI, can it be less expensive? And the first client that asked was medical. And so I did some tests and I tracked my time and I was exchanging writer hard costs for time to make sure that the content was good and accurate. There really was no cost savings there. So that's what we found. We are not using AI for content creation for many reasons, but we do use it in our day-to-day, in our methodologies. It's a lot more like what you mentioned. It's about efficiency. It's a tool that does not have bias the way we do as people. So being able to run a client's web page through, there are blinders that we have just as humans that AI does not. So are we reviewing every single opportunity for every single client? And that's how we're using AI so we can produce better results and do things a little more efficiently and faster for sure. But we bake a lot of that into our, we do like a base fee with our clients based on their website size. We bake a lot of that into that pricing and then stacking the deliverables on top of that. So it's usually included, but definitely it's something that I think you need to custom build in based on the client that you're working with.
Guarantees. Is that a word that you use when talking with your clients? Do you guarantee any results in SEO with your agency?
We do put projections together for prospects. We usually choose a book of keywords, try to just give them an idea of what it could look like. But yeah, there's a disclaimer down there that's, this is based on things right now as they are and could change over time. We also do that based off of the packages that we put together for them, right? If they're doing something much smaller, and not from a price point necessarily, but from a project perspective, they're just not doing as much maybe content production or link building with us. Results will be slower. So it's going to change those projections accordingly. The only thing I will guarantee is that they will get all of their deliverables by the end of every month, and we will give them a report and we will hop on the phone. And I guarantee that they will get, great service from us, but we don't do any kind of result guarantees. Usually when that comes up with prospects, they ask when they can expect to start to see results. And we can usually promise that by month 2 or 3, we can see some results from our work, whether or not it's like massive ROI from our projects is not something we necessarily agree or guarantee at that point. But we do promise that, in our reporting, we will start to be able to show you results of the work that we're doing.
I want to talk about staying competitive. How do you go about changing the price, making sure it's relevant, revising the structure of your agency's pricing? Because it's all about being competitive in the eyes of customers. What is your suggestion in terms of staying competitive? What specifically do you look at Ignite Visibility? Is it just an internal thing that you look at, or do you look outside at external factors like, I don't know, maybe your top competitors that are in your local area?
We've been lucky in this last year or so. We've brought on a handful of team members from other agencies, right? So it's talking to them about what they did and using some of that experience to figure out how to improve, whether it's our sales slides or our pricing structure. bringing that insight in, I think, is really helpful. If you don't have that option, the other thing I've seen people do is reach out, right? Like you can reach out for mentorship from someone who maybe has some agency background to get some of that insight. Pay them for like a couple hours of their time just to like pick their brain. That's a nice way to do it as well. But it is a very tight-knit community here at in San Diego. So we have a little advantage to that too. Like we just have a lot of myself, a lot of other people that I work with, lots of connections to be able to ask questions to friends or network through our networks, just be able to hear things. The other thing that our biz dev team does is if we do lose out on a deal, we lose out on a project, they make sure to do follow-up with the prospect and they ask, who did you decide to go with? Why did you decide to go with them? I think that's probably one of the best ways to get some insight into how you're losing. I'd say that's also just great feedback for why didn't you choose us, right? Like, was it pricing? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it has nothing to do with the price and it has everything to do with the value that you weren't able to show, or something much more logistical you have no control over. But yeah, we get a lot of insight from prospects as well when they're willing to share that information with us.
Exactly my next question. What do you think is the impact of pricing on client acquisition and retention? Do you think there's a correlation between pricing strategies and agency growth trends?
Yes.
Because we've spoken about like clients coming in, but when you change that pricing, what is the reaction of your current client base and in terms of new client acquisition?
I mean, I think right now, especially, it's tough. We definitely are seeing some impact from the economy or fear of the economy, whatever side you're on. But people who are worried and bringing budgets in or cutting things and just things that are impacting the way people think about how they're spending their marketing budgets. And then when we have to go into the conversation and say, hey, actually, also, we increased our price. Sometimes we're saving it for our long legacy clients. Sometimes we're allowing them to just come in at that lower rate. Maybe we're making some other adjustments to their scope to help us out. But we want to keep that relationship. That's more important to us in some cases. In other cases, though, we've definitely been successful with getting a client onto a higher price point package. Usually, they're also legacy clients who have been with us for a long time, have seen us grow and understand that our agency has changed and they're really happy with the level of service they're getting now and they don't want to leave. So they're willing to pay that extra money. Having the conversation is always a little scary. We go in and we're like, oh, hope this doesn't upset anyone. But if you can go in and really show, I think it's the same, right? If you can go in and show your value and really explain why, you're bumping from $100 to $150 an hour, whatever it is. Where's that extra $50 going? Why are they spending it? Did you add people to the team? Like they have a whole other person now that they didn't have before. Or maybe we realize that you need this additional service. So we're going to increase price, but we're going to kind of adjust your deliverables too to compensate for that difference. Things like that I think when you're really flexible and willing to work with this person that you've hopefully built a relationship with already, it goes a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, and we're actually closing in on my questions. I just wanted to ask you two things. One is there anything else that we missed about pricing that is always on your mind? And what is the one thing that you wish SEO agencies understood more about pricing?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is you can charge whatever you want. You can literally set your own price, have it be whatever you want. But if you can't prove why they need to spend that amount of money with you, if you can't prove the value of every dollar, if you can't prove that they're going to get return on the spend with you in some capacity, then it's not going to work. So if you're just showing up and saying, yeah, it's going to be $300 and I'm going to do your SEO, like that's all you're giving them, then I think you'd have a hard time selling it on $30. But if you put together a really thoughtful plan, I think that goes a long way, and that's what's really going to make the difference. As far as what agencies don't understand or for businesses, I think agency side, experience agency side has been just figuring out like what is our value? How do we grow? That it's hard. I think it's really tough. And I think especially with people who have been there since the beginning and are like, but this is how we built this place, right? This is how we did it versus where maybe we want to go directionally as an agency. I think that is a difficult shift. But I guess that's maybe the advice is, and we've touched on it a little bit, but what is the direction you want to go? Do you want to talk to the small business owners? Because then your price point does need to align with the market. And if you can't hit that price point, maybe that's not your client base anymore. And you need to figure out how to shift your marketing to bring in clients that are going to be more aligned with what you're willing to charge, or what you want to charge, I would say. And that varies obviously a little bit from, some people from the bottom group are going to be in the top group and they're just willing to spend and all of that. So you don't really want to cut off any opportunity. But yeah, I think figuring out how to navigate just that, the value and understanding who you're pitching to, is what makes understanding your pricing a lot easier.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jen. And I also have a question about, it just came right now. Is growth always the goal of, let's talk about specifically about Ignite Visibility. Is growth always the goal? Because I had a talk at a recent podcast with Kevin Gibbons of Resignal, and they have, I'm not sure what the number of clients is, but they are happy with the number they have because they can provide them with exactly what they need. And if they want to take up more, they need to expand their team, and there's just a whole different thing involved, and it's just, there's no guarantee that it's going to scale up the way you want it to. So I wanted to ask you about like Ignite Visibility.
It's growth with new logos. It's retention, right? They're hand in hand. You can't grow if you don't keep your current client base. And I think that if you're not, I don't know that you need to always be focused on exponential growth. Maybe that's not what we're looking for, but we are constantly looking to continue to bring new business on, because retention is not always 100%, right? Some clients leave for a variety of reasons. So keeping your current client base happy and then bringing that new business in is really critical. And we've built process and systems inside of how we operate that makes it easy for us to scale. So we know how much money every individual person on the SEO team is managing or is associated with. And then we know what number we need to hit in order to flag that we need to bring a new person on in order to sustain the revenue load that we're at. So I think being able to track that and understand, it goes back to that level of effort. How much time is your team, or how much time are you spending? If you eventually sell 120 hours a week specifically, and you are one person pricing out your services, like that, right? That's like not impossible for one person. So what is that breaking point? And then what is the pricing that allows you to bring someone on to help? I think having that figured out has made it easier for us to be able to scale and make some of the pricing adjustments that we've wanted to do.
Great. Thank you, Jen. This has been very interesting. We wanted to keep it short to get a lot more value in it, but I'm hoping that we will have another talk in the future about another aspect of SEO, or maybe you'll share some exciting information from Ignite Visibility. But I want to sign off by saying that today, Jen Cornwell shared with us her insights and expertise on setting prices for SEO agencies. Thank you for your time, and be sure to subscribe and join the next episode of the Do Follow podcast.